worst part about autism, in my opinion, is the label.
I think it goes back to exposing yourself to other people's ignorance and whether you're okay with that, whether you can just brush it off or whether it's going to drive you absolutely nuts. I know quite a few adults who are kind of secretly autistic very deliberately because they're worried, like at work, they're going to be seen differently or treated differently or, you know, somehow seen as lesser, which is such a shame. It's obviously like completely individual choice, but you sort of think if more people were known to be autistic, then there'd be maybe less risk of people making those wrong assumptions because they'd realise, you know, what a range of individuals are actually out there. But until we get to the point where people are truly comfortable doing that because they don't fear that sort of discrimination, we're in that sort of catch-22, I think, still. That shows that kind of entrenched ableism and kind of subconscious or unconscious bias against autistic people. One of my autistic students, him and I, came up with a title, and it's about a critique of autism theory. And the title was, "Is Autism an Appropriate Moniker for Autistic People?" Which I think is a really cool title. So basically thinking about, actually, have we even got it wrong? Have we even got it wrong calling autistic people autistic in terms of that, going back to the origins of the word autism meaning self and the whole concept of autistic people being very inward looking and egocentric. Actually, I don't think that's the case at all. Most autistic people are very outward looking and lacking in ego. So actually, if you think about it, even the word itself, we're kind of getting it wrong, I think, because we don't seem to have the equivalent for the predominant neurotype, and nor do we have a definition. Like, people are obsessed with having a definition of autism and a really clear set of criteria, like, you know, but as you say, it doesn't work like that. There's definitely autism and there's definitely people who are not autistic. I'm absolutely vehemently, adamantly against this concept of everybody's a bit autistic. It's complete nonsense in my view. You're either autistic or you're not. But that's it. I don't even like the concept of a spectrum because that lends itself to functioning labels and severity and mildness and all of those sorts of things, which I think it's unhelpful. You know, I don't think it's beneficial. You know, how do you determine whether one person's autism is more severe than somebody else's? What you can determine is whether the impact on somebody is positive, negative, or neutral, and that's far more interesting and far more useful to the individual. So you'll know yourself in one environment, being autistic might be the best thing in the universe, but you that same autistic person in a different environment, and all of a sudden they're really struggling, but they're the same person. So you can't say that person is, you know, mildly autistic in one day and then severely autistic the next day. It doesn't make any sense. But the impact on the individual, along with the environment that they're in, that's going to differ massively from one person to the next, and from one environment to the next. So I always think that's the most helpful way of looking at it. I like the idea of a constellation. It's a great word, and it also makes, you know, it's multifaceted, isn't it? So there's loads of things that's going to impact on the individual, you know, kind of in 4, 5, 6 dimensions. So I like that. I like that idea.
Sometimes it stops any sort of progress when you're trying to convince someone, not trying to work out what the truth is.
Yeah, I think people sometimes, if I'm speaking at a conference or, you know, even come on my course or whatever, and the comment is, come on, Luke, you're telling us all these things about what we've got wrong about autism. Can't you just tell us what autism actually is? And it's kind of like, well, it doesn't really work like that because it's a bunch of human beings. You can't describe every single human being who is autistic, but you can say, look, it's ridiculous to say, if somebody says, "Oh, I'm autistic," your response being, "Well, you don't look autistic," or something as ridiculous as that. Going back to this anxiety thing, that causes so much stress to people because it's kind of like being judged all the time just based on a label. As opposed to, I always think, like, if someone says to me, "I'm autistic," I'm like, "Cool, congratulations." You know, let's talk about it. What's it like for you? Because it's going to be different compared to the other 99 people that I met last year. you're not going to be the same. There's going to be similarities for sure. Of course there are, but you're still a human being in your own right. So, you know, let's talk about how it impacts you. I think that's where society's got it wrong, because there are, as you say, absolutely spot on. There are all these stereotypes, which rarely, you know, you never see somebody who ticks the boxes for all of the stereotypes of autism. So by definition, then they become a little bit nonsensical, but they do perpetuate this notion that autism is presented in this particular way. Whereas then you as an individual, it's like, oh no, it doesn't work for me. So, you know, you know, sometimes that's actually quite offensive, you know, when people make those assumptions. The other one that really cracks me up is like, oh yeah, you know, like, I don't know, a 50-year-old woman declares that she's autistic, and the response is, oh, you're nothing like my friend's 4-year-old son. I'm like, oh, really? Blow me away. You know, that you really are comparing a 50-year-old woman with a 4-year-old boy and saying, oh, you're not very similar. Well, you know, why would they be? Incredible. Then in terms of anxiety and stress, if you're being told, or even if it's not directed at you, but you associate everybody else's association with autism as being negative, then what's that going to do to a person's, you know, self-esteem and confidence and sense of self and all of those sorts of things? It must be absolutely horrendous.